Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 44 of Sipping Tea with Stacy T. Welcome in. Glad you're here. You're here with your girl. Man, the year's almost over. We're doing this. I have to fix the lighting because, woo, it is not working for me at all. All right. I think that's a little bit better, but y'all know I'm going to keep fiddling with that thing because that's what I do. Good afternoon, Tiffany. Good, wait a minute, 5 degrees? 5 degrees? Good Lord. Sweet Jesus in the morning time and in the afternoon. That's cold. That is cold. You can keep that. sorry for you, but you can keep that. Y'all can have that 5 degree situation. It's been chilly over here. It's been windy more than anything else. I've noticed a lot of wind. So, but yeah, nope, you can keep that. You can have the 5 degrees. I think it's I mean, to you it'd be like a heat wave over here. I think it's like almost 30 degrees. It might be 20 something degrees. So yeah, sorry for that. Hey Kathy, welcome in. Welcome in. How's everybody doing? So everybody give me your temperature check. How are you doing? Scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling this morning? Y'all, today kept it simple, had a busy morning. Today we're having Snapple peach tea. Yes, Tiffany, this is what I'm drinking. You'll be okay. It'll be all right, sweetie. One of my favorites. You're feeling a 10. Okay. I love that. On a scale of 1 to 10, a 10. That's a blessing. How are you doing, Cheryl? I just saw you sneak in. Peach tea is the best. It really is. Not every peach tea, though, y'all. Not every peach tea. And I know some of y'all are not peach people. You'll be okay, too. But yeah, this is, I honestly, one of my favorites. Haven't had it in a while. So excited about it. But waiting for everybody else to check in. Emotionally 9. The temp is cold. Yeah, the temperature is cold, but you're feeling a 9. That's good. I'll take a 9. I don't think I'm feeling a 9. So that's both of you guys that answered so far are feeling a little bit higher than I am. First of all, I'm hungry, y'all. So there's that piece. So automatically, when you're hungry, your affect is a little off. But there's that. And then on top of that, just a little bit of an interesting morning. So I would say I'm probably at like a 7.5. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7, maybe a 7.8. Maybe I'm gonna try to be, a little bit more optimistic. So let's say a 7.8. That's where I'm at. So as you all come in, I don't think I've seen Cheryl's temperature check quite yet. So hopefully I'll be able to get that. But y'all, we're almost at the end of the year. Can you believe 2026 is almost here? For me, that is wild. Like it's just so weird. I feel like the interesting thing is sometimes the days drag like within the day was what I mean. But man, it is. I literally remember everything about New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. Well, not New Year's Day, but New Year's Eve last year, and I can't believe it's almost here again. So, yeah. But what a year it's been. 2025 definitely had somewhere to be. Yeah, it definitely did have somewhere to be. But 2025 kicked my tail is what it did. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. It started at a 10, went to a 4. Started at a 10, went to a 4, came back to an 8. You know what? I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that. You know why? Because that feels very much like my healing journey. Started at a 10 because I was like, okay, I'm excited. Like, let's heal. Let's heal, Stacy. Do all the stuff. That's cool. So I was really prepared to do that work. And I really emotionally went into it. Like, I wanted to say excited because I really didn't know entirely what I was going to be doing or what to expect. But I went to it with a positive, hopeful thought process. I did not know that I was going to have all the ebbs and flows that did find its way into the year. But yet and still, I can look back on the year as one of my biggest years of growth. Um, one of the largest one of the most painful years of my life. 100%, it has been that. One of the most eye-opening years of my life. So if I were to try to, call it something or label it something, it would be all of those things. It was painful. It was eye-opening. It was a huge learning year, a big shifting year. Um, So I'm hoping a year of healing. It was a year of healing. But the funny thing is, I think what people discount, not necessarily you all, but what people often discount when you're talking about a year of healing is the pain that comes with that, the uncovering that comes with that, um, I mean, I think all the emotions you go through as far as, not trusting, talking about me, not talking about your healing journey because I'm not in your head. I don't know, or your body. I don't know exactly what it's felt like for you if you've been on this journey with me. Um, but it has been a really transformative year, but painful. Like, and I know I keep saying painful, but I feel like that needs to be stated because a lot of people, when they talk about their healing journey, they really only talk about the positive, the after effect or the after implications and how it changes their life or how they're able to see themselves differently, how they are able to advocate for themselves in ways that they never have, potentially how they are able to navigate difficult conversations, all the things that you want to come out of a healing year. But again, I have to tell people this is why when people say, Stacey, I think I'm going to do my healing journey. And I'm like, cool. Are you prepared for what that's going to look like for you? And sometimes people are caught off guard. They're like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to heal. I'm going to be better. I'm going to address those, traumas from being a kid or from my teen years or from what kids did to me at school, like whatever it is. Some people are like, I'm going to address those feelings of worthlessness that happened, in school because I had bullies constantly picking on me. And at home, I had people saying that I was great, but every time I left my home, people were telling me that I was worthless. And so it was this constant back and forth about, how I was showing up and all that, right? So, I think that what people need to do is be more honest about what things feel like. And I know often people are not in a space where they want to talk about their emotions or how things make them feel or how situations challenge them. But in the hardest thing for most people is to allow themselves to walk in a space of vulnerability. The thing that I learned is it's sometimes not external vulnerability, it's sometimes internal vulnerability. We don't even want to be vulnerable with ourselves. Like, what are our dreams really? I think so many times, and I'm speaking about myself, obviously, because I don't know for you, but there have been so many times that I've had things that I've wanted to do, or dreams that I've had, or goals that I've, thought about in my brain. And sometimes they seem too big, right? I don't know if you've ever dreamed a dream and you're like, that's ridiculous, Stacey. Like, well, obviously you wouldn't be saying Stacey, but um, I don't know. Like, I don't think that's possible for me. Why am I even dreaming something so big or, elaborate or bold? And we know God can do all things. We say all the things. We say all the cliches and all the phrases because if you've been in the church, you know how to like spew those things out, right? It just comes out of you like nothing. You don't have to think about it. It's your constant response. But if you don't feel what you're saying, it's useless. Right. So if you know that God can do all things, but in your head, you're like, he can do all things, but why would he allow for me to experience something that big? Or why would he trust me with something that big? That's also a really um, an honest place to come from. So for me, one of the things that God had me do this past week was for me to actually look at the year in reverse, right? So it's been a blessing, the ways that God has really allowed for me to view this year. I don't know if you all remember, but my first episode on Sipping Tea with Stacey T was bringing your whole self, right? And I talked about how the entirety of my life, I never felt like I could do that, right? I didn't feel like I could do that at school. I didn't feel like some capacities I could do that at home. I definitely didn't feel like I could do that as I aged. So it wasn't something that I ever really felt like I could do. I really, truly, and this is just the honest truth, I really felt in order for people to see me, I had to be performative. What do I mean by that? I had to show up as, having the right outfit and saying the right thing and getting the right grades always. I felt like if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't have value, right? I wouldn't. And it's not to say every single person made me feel that way, but the thing that people don't understand, because sometimes when you're healing, people take what you're saying personally, right? Um, but what people don't understand is The things that people say to us that are negative are the ones that ring the loudest in our brain, right? You've probably heard about people being loud and wrong. Those people that are loud and wrong take the biggest microphone, spew the biggest rumors, say the most junk, right? That's constantly what they do and how they show up. So the things that people have said to us that are horrible, the sentiments about us not having value, or not being lovable, or not being worthy, those, or not having, not being smart enough, not being pretty enough, not being skinny enough, or not having more weight on you, like whatever it is, because people will pick you apart. What happens though is that you adopt those things as true. I will say I did. I'm not saying you did, but you adopt a lot of that stuff as fact. It's not fact, y'all. It's just what somebody has felt, what somebody's opinion is. But we will sometimes take a person's opinion because they're loud about it or they're repetitive about it, and then we make it our truth. And when you do that as a kid, you don't really unlearn how to do that unless it's, intentional. Maybe somebody that's like, okay, Stacy's showing up like this. I'm seeing that she doesn't feel like she's worthy, or she doesn't feel like she has value, or the only way people pay attention to her is if she gets another A, right? Yes, it's great to excel. Yes, it's great to do well in school. That's not what I'm talking about. But if that's the only metric that you measure yourself with, right? That's the only way you see value, that can be problematic, because let's say you then are in a different circumstance where you can't be measured by a grade, then what? Then you automatically have no value. If I go to church, they're not measuring if I'm getting an A, right? They're measuring what? It could be like, is she singing loudly enough? Is she singing on the key that I like? Is she overpowering? Is she upstaging? Is she not? I mean, there could be a lot of different ways that people are measuring what it is that you do or how you show up. And the problem then becomes, I have to constantly what? Change what I'm doing or meet some new standard. It's exhausting. It is exhausting. And so, the fact that I grew up like that, and it transitioned all the way through all the years, y'all, all the way up until I am the age that I am now. That mentality of having to show up and having to be on. It's to the point, and every one of us has done it in some capacity. Perfect example. There have been days that every one of us, I'm sure, has not felt that great in our body, right? We felt exhausted, tired. Maybe we had an upset stomach. Maybe we felt lightheaded, or we felt dizzy, or whatever it was, right? And we still had to show up. It wasn't like we could check out because we had a head cold, or maybe our stomach was a little bit upset, and we're like, okay, well, I still have to do this, this, and this, whether it's being a parent, whether it's having to go to work, whatever it is, I still have to show up regardless, because it has to get done. The thing has to be done. And sure do have to show up. Yeah, you have to show up. But guess what? What do you do when you're showing up and it's really your physical body showing up, but your mind is not present? Your heart is not present, right? Your spirit is not present. Your physical body is there. And we've all seen it. We've all done it. We've been there in the physical sense, but sometimes we don't hear people talking to us. We don't hear, like, we're literally just surviving. And that mentality of just showing up and surviving and pushing and pushing and pushing, y'all, who told y'all that that was the way to do things? And I get it, especially if you're a Black person in this country, you grew up, or even if you're not from this country, you're from the Caribbean, because there was slavery there too, right? You grew up thinking you always had to push. And if you're a woman, you always had to prove yourself and push, right? So at no point was rest an important thing. Fine. I remember somebody said, you're going to sleep when you're dead. I'm like, ma'ams and sirs, we might need to sleep now, right? But the mentality of like pushing, 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 going, going, going gets so ingrained in our head that when your body is fighting against that and saying, I need you to slow down, you're doing too much, we don't listen. We push and push and push, and we basically tell our body to shut up. And, other people are making us, and again, sometimes it's internalized, right? But for me, it was like this thing of like seeing every member of my family constantly going, going, going. And even when my mind or my body was telling me to slow down or to stop for a second, I didn't do it, because I didn't want to be the one in the family that was lazy or didn't show up or didn't do the things, right? I didn't want to feel like that. And it's not to say that they were saying that to me. I didn't want to appear that way, right? Because everybody else is doing stuff, so I should be doing stuff, right? That there's a lot that this year has taught me that I've had to unlearn. a lot this year, because oftentimes when we're busy, and it's not that we're doing bad things, y'all. We could be busy doing God's work, even. We could be busy doing things for the church. We could be doing things for our community, for our family. We could be going and doing good things. The reality, however, that I've come to understand and really sit in this year is, yes, you can be doing those things for other people. Did God tell you to do those things? Is the first thing. And then the second thing is, okay, yeah, he didn't tell me to do those things. He didn't, he didn't say I need to show up in that way, blah, 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 blah. But I'm doing these things because, is it feeding my ego? That was the other thing that I had to be challenged on. Because a lot of times when we do things for people, we do things because it makes us feel good. Right? I mean, if we're honest, yeah, I did this thing. And it's not to say that you have to tell everybody, did you see that bag of clothes that I gave to Stacy? Like, I'm not saying that, right? Though y'all know some people that do that. What I'm saying is there's something about our ego that likes for people to see that we're doing good things. Again, did God ask you to do those things? So this is the consistent pivot for me is, okay, cool, but did God ask you to do it? All right, so let me open up my drink. And y'all know I'm gonna like it because y'all because it's the peach tea that I like. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that's lovely. I love it. I love it. I love it. Get you some. Get you some. So this year, like I said, God told me to rewind, do a rewind of bringing your whole self. Even when he gave that to me originally, I was like, bringing my whole self, because I used to hate the phrase, honestly, when you're working in workforce development or HR spaces, you'll hear very often, we need to make sure that people feel like they can be their whole authentic self and they can bring their whole self. Ma'ams and sirs, you don't want me to bring my whole self to work, because my whole self sometimes is going to maybe tell you about yourself, and you don't want to hear that. So let's be entirely honest. You want me to bring the part of myself that makes you feel like, okay, Stacy's cool, Stacy's chill, like you want that version, that piece of me, but you don't want the whole thing. Most often you don't want me to be in a space where I'm like, okay, let me read my word, y'all. I'm on my lunch, I'm reading my word. So, oh, anybody need prayer? Like, y'all don't want that part of me either in the workplace. Like, so the honest truth is that we have to go into spaces trying to show up as who we fully are, but recognizing that just because I'm showing up as who I fully am does not mean the person next to me wants to digest that. It doesn't mean they want to consume that. It doesn't mean they want to be around that at all. And that has to be okay for you. Now, the other thing that I will say about, bringing your whole self to any space is it does make you vulnerable. Because if you're going to show up as your full self, and your full self is an emotional person, as an example, oftentimes in certain relationships, people don't want to show that. Because why? You've been taken advantage of before. And so you're like, I'm not doing that, Stacy. Be vulnerable for what? With people that could do whatever it is that they're going to do, and I have no idea, and they may show up in, a space or in a way that hurts my heart. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I get it. I entirely understand that. But my question is this: are you not doing it because you're afraid of what they may say? If that's the case, I understand that, because a lot of my growing up was really consumed with people's opinion of me, right? How is showing up? Did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Was I involved in the right thing? Did I hang out with the right people? If not, then what? Like, all those things really guided pretty much the majority of the way that I moved. Sometimes I do wonder what it would have been like if I was like, if I was really in a space, because I used to say I don't care, but the reality is I cared more than I should have. Words do hurt. Words do hurt, and people use them very freely, and people use them without abandon. People feel like, and this is one of the things that I have been processing this year. And I've said this before. Just because you're healing doesn't mean anybody else around you is healing. And it also doesn't mean they respect that you're healing. And it doesn't mean they understand how you're healing. So you have to apply grace to how people show up. That being said, if you've already been applying grace and people are just basically spitting in your face, ma'ams and sirs, move on. I'm not saying cut them off. I'm saying move on, for the thought that, you showing up in kindness is going to make them be kind. It may, but it also may not. They may not give two cruds about you being kind, right? So, you have to walk in a space of, I'm doing this for me, and I'm doing this because God wants me to be a better version of myself. God wants me to be the full, whole version of myself. And what he ordained me to do, right? And the purpose that he has allowed for me to walk in, the reason that he ordained me, because he saw what it is that I am, who it is that I am. And he was not, he still chose me. Like, so let that be the qualifying thing that kind of always rings in your brain. When you don't feel worthy, when other people try to seek to make you feel invalid or that you're not worthy or you don't have, what it takes, remember that God has qualified you. He already looked into eternity. And I always think about it from the space of time of Calvary. He lived years other than that, 33 years on the earth, right? But I think about Calvary. And the fact that before, as he was walking up with the cross over his shoulder and he's falling because they're beating him extensively and whipping him and spitting at him and mocking him and doing all the things, they're doing the absolute most horrific worst and the most, right? He looked into eternity, because remember, we see time and God sees eternity. So his days and our days, the math is not even close to mathing on that. When he looked out and he was nailed to that cross, he saw me in eternity and said, I still choose her. He literally saw me way out in eternity, and he was like, I choose her. So when somebody look and when he chooses you, he qualifies you. That's the word. That is the word, right? Who he's ordained, who he has chosen, he qualifies. So why is it then that we allow for so many people to invalidate us? If we believe that God's word is God's word, if we believe that God's word is true, why do we consistently apply other people's opinion and their thoughts about us to our heart? We attach it to our heart and it breaks it continually, breaks it over and over and over again. And what we should be applying to their words that are not God, is the word. Well, that's great that you feel that way, but God sees me as fearfully and wonderfully made. That's fine that you think I'm ugly, but God doesn't see me like that. God sees me as fearfully and wonderfully made. It's fine that you feel like I'm, not smart enough, but he sees me as the apple of his eye. He's already qualified me. So clearly he sees my intelligence and he sees my skill and he sees all the things that it is that he allowed to be born in me from the day that I was born and put on this earth till the day that I am no longer here. He has attached a seed in you, a seed that it is your job to protect and it is your job to allow God to fertilize. In that seed is all the things you need for greatness. All the things you need for purpose are already in that seed, and they were there from the very beginning. The problem is we allow for people in their words and their thoughts about us, and maybe sometimes even their actions toward us, to distort the seed. We allow for them to attach themselves to that seed. That is not for them to do. But we consistently allow for people to have these toxic words, these negative words, these draining activities where people are pulling and pulling and pulling from us and never pouring back into us, right? We have all of those things consistently happen. And what we say is, cool, come on in. Come on in. Here's the seed that I'm supposed to protect. Why don't you hold on to it for a second and beat it up, damage it, kick it, try to cut it, try to, do all the things to it, pour acid on it, and then give it back to me when you're done. Ma'ams and sirs, please make that make sense. Make it make sense, right? Because it's like, and again, I'm saying this, and I get that I'm saying it, and it sounds like, oh, then Stacy thinks it's easy. Y'all, you do not know the struggle that I've been literally managing daily as I'm going through this healing journey. It has felt like the most out of body experience and so distorting to be experiencing this journey the way that I have. Even the speed, and then somebody else talked about it. They're like, the speed that God has you going through this. Now, y'all, I'm going to be honest. February to December doesn't feel like speed. That feels slow as heck to me. But when other people are talking about, oh, I've been on this one part of my healing journey for 10 years. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is faster than you would think. Because I literally had to go to unpack stuff from my youngest memories all the way into where I am right now. But what I've literally been able to pull away are some really amazing gems. And one of those gems is we have to be in a space where we are applying God's word to things instead of man's criticisms. God, who created all, or a person that doesn't have any capability of what God can do. But those words that these people say, I'm telling you, they're so devastating. They're so lethal. They're so toxic that they really seek to pierce that seed that God birthed in you, that allowed for that God planted in you and allowed for you to protect. That's your job. Protect that seed because you're protecting purpose. And I know that there are so many of you that have dealt with, people discounting you, people not showing up for you. That's a big one for me, right? And I always mean when I say that, I'm not talking about the physical. Yeah, I would love for people to physically show up for me for things that are important to me, but it's also the emotional. Show up for me in the ways that allow for my heart to feel safe, right? Because when you live in a space where your heart is always guarded, it is exhausting, y'all. It is so tiring. And I know I'm not talking just to myself. It is exhausting. And then what makes it challenging for some people is like, well, Stacey, and I had somebody ask me this week on TikTok, Stacey, well, what do you do when you have tried everything to get the people that are in your circle, the small circle that I talked about weeks and weeks ago? What do you do when those people are the people that consistently hurt you? Check your circle. Just because you've known people for years does not mean that does not grant them access to your circle. You grant them access. And I've talked about boundaries ad nauseum. I've talked about it over and over and over again. Why? Because they're important for you. People aren't going to like them. Be aware. Like, they're like, oh, cool. You have boundaries. That's cool. That's for everybody else, right? Not me. You couldn't mean me. There's no way you're assigning a boundary to me, Stacey. I'm like, oh, you're the main one. You get 2 boundaries, as a matter of fact, because you're trying not to have, you get 2 boundaries. How about that? I think it's very, very important for us to recognize that the journey to healing is not going to be at all what you expect. And I say that because if you're the type of person that likes to strategize, right? You're like, okay, I'm gonna do this healing journey. So if I follow how this worked for Stacey for months, 2, 3, and 4, because the first month is just all over the place. But month 2, 3, and 4, I'm gonna really digest into it. I'm gonna go into it deep, right? Because I believe that's what she did. So that's 2, 3, and 4. That's spoken for. End of 4 into 5, 5, 6, and 7. I'm gonna do, like, y'all, you can't plan it out. You cannot map it out. You literally just have to wake up every day and say, okay, God, it's you and me. What is this gonna look like today? And Cheryl made a point earlier. She said that she started at a 10, went to a 4, it might have been more like a 2, and then went back up to an 8, right? I added, might have been more like a 2. She didn't write that. But she was talking about, starting here, going down, and then coming back up, right? And now the part where she's at right now didn't get back to the 10, right? It didn't get back to the place that she originally started, but that's also okay. That is also okay. Just like you've heard people say it's okay not to be okay. It is. It's okay to say I'm having a bad day. It's okay to say I'm having a moment and I need to be able to have the moment. People often don't do well around emotional people or people that are in an emotional state because they don't know how to handle that. And oftentimes what people will do instead, it was a 1. What people will do instead is they will demonize your emotion because they don't know how to process emotion for themselves. It makes them uncomfortable. So they're like, oh, you're so dramatic, or you're so this, or you're just too much. Ma'ams and sirs, if that person is too much for you, then maybe you're not enough for them. Like, maybe that's what it is. How about instead of assigning that person is too much or too extra, worry about you. Get you some business to worry about, right? Worry about yourself. But unfortunately, people tend to like to be external with how they see things, right? They don't want to do the internal work because either they don't feel that they need to, they feel justified in how they're acting and thinking and interacting with people at all times, right? So they're like, oh, that's a you thing. Oh, you need to heal. Well, I'm good. There ain't nothing for me to heal from. I put everything in Jesus' hands. So did I. And he's actually the one walking me through this sucker. So what does that exactly mean? Everybody's not going to be team healing. And you have to be okay with that. You have to also apply grace to things. Um, you know, when I've been going through this process and, talking about bringing my whole self, when you have interactions with people and they are being who they are, that's maybe it, right? So you might be having interactions with somebody and it's a negative interaction, or it feels like a cold interaction, or a disconnected interaction. And that's how the person shows up, right? That's what you're thinking. Okay, wow, this person really just doesn't want to interact, or y'all, they might just be giving you all that they have. And we often try or think that somebody's going to interact with us the way that we're interacting with them. We are like, oh, okay, clearly, this is going to be what it is. And this person, like, that's literally how we see people. And people will say, well, you can't assume that somebody's going to react the way that you would. Maybe, you've been in a situation where people have constantly treated you poorly. And so you're just like, well, another day, another dollar. It's not a big deal to me. But to the person next to you that's never had that as an experience, that could be devastating, right? It could really break them. Also, you have to, when you're doing your healing journey, and I'm going to say something, but I also want this to be clear. I'm not dismissing people's behavior. If people in your past treated you poorly, then they will own up to God for that, right? For treating you poorly. So that's not to minimize that at all. But you also have to remember, people can only give you from what they can only pull from what they know and what they've had. So if you have a person that has treated you poorly, potentially they were treated poorly before. And you've heard hurt people. That's very true, unless they're willing to heal. Unless they're willing to heal, unless they feel like there's a need for them to do better and to know better and to act out what they've learned. That is different. But there's so many people that are like, that's how my mama did it. That's how my grandpappy did it. Like, well, great for them. But maybe you should now recognize that they were jacked up. Like, you can love them and that's cool, but you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't. And you definitely can't pour from a cracked one, right? You can't. I mean, yeah, you can put all sorts of glue in there, but the cup is never the same. And there's some of us that we need to ask God to get, not even to fill our cup, we need to ask God for a new one. Because the one that you had, he's poured into it. You've had some people that have poured into it, but then you've also had people that grabbed your cup and threw it on the ground and then glued it back and said, suck it up and here's the cup. Right? We need to ask God for all the things, y'all. And I've talked about this multiple times. Many of us, I will say myself, absolutely, have felt like, what I'm talking about or what I need to bring to God is small. Right? There are other bigger things that are going on, bigger fish to fry. Like I felt like that, right? And so I don't go to God with it. I'm like, I ain't bothering him with that. He got wars to stop and all the things. But the things that matter to you matter to him. And if you can't get that into your spirit, like the things, even if you think that they're minuscule, even if somebody else told you, like, why you keep praying about that thing, until pray to God for peace then. Right? Pray to him for understanding. Don't pray for patience, y'all. I keep trying to tell y'all, please. Well, I mean, if you feel like that's what you're supposed to do that, but just hold on to your hat because the only way to prove patience is by putting you through some stuff. Because it says the trial or trying of your faith worketh patience. So it has to be tried. So read the whole phrase, y'all. Read the whole sentence. It tells you right there, you're about to be tried. So, okay, cool. But be prepared for what that looks like. Be prepared for how that's going to feel. Be prepared for what you're going to experience. When I talk about it, watch what you pray for. You absolutely need to watch what you pray for. You need, look, God is funny like that. You have to be specific, y'all. Specific. Spell it out. Don't just say, oh God, I want you to bless me with a man. Any old man? Oh no. I didn't mean any man. Like, no. Yeah, you tried in the fire. I guess tried in the fire is for real. But you have to be specific. God blessed me with a man. He sent you some random crazy. Now, God, I didn't. God, like you didn't know what I meant. Like, come on now, Lord. And he's like, you asked for a man. I sent you a man. There you go, right there. And you're like, ooh, could he have been, my type God? But again, that's obviously in joking, kind of. But we need to be really specific with and we need to be mindful. We need to be careful what we pray for. Ask God for the ability to prepare for all the things you're going to need to learn before you ask to learn the lesson. God, prepare me. God, make sure that I am sound in my mind. God, make sure that I understand, what it is to have to carry, some of these things that you're going to have me face. Pray for that before you pray for the other things, so that when you get the things, when you have the trial, when you have the situation that you're like, man, what is going on? When you have that, when you're experiencing that, God is going to help you to navigate it and push your way through as you're living it. And that's an important thing. That's really important for you to pay attention to, right? The next thing that I want to say about this year, um and there's been so many things, when I think about at the beginning of the year how I viewed myself, my actual self, right? I This is the thing. I wasn't really thinking about me at all, right? In my healing, I was really thinking about, my heart and what I needed to do to make my heart better, what I needed to do to be to be prepared to be a wife, if I'm going to be honest, right? That's kind of what I started the year thinking out, because that's what I thought was going to be, right? So I'm thinking about, okay, you have to do this, and you need to keep, reading the word so that you can apply the word to the hard days and all that stuff, right? So that's what I was doing, and I was going about that being I wouldn't say it was central to my healing journey, but it was absolutely a factor. I wanted to be the best version of myself so I didn't injure people as I navigate, relationships and of all kinds of friendships and all the things. So I was definitely thinking that way, but I was 100% in a mode of, okay, Stacey, like, this is going to be a season where you're going to be stepping into this role, and or some people call it calling, whatever, service, ministry. Y'all get the point, right? Whatever you would like to call being a wife. So I was like in my mind preparing for that, and really asking God, what things do I need to work on emotionally, mentally, spiritually to be the best version of myself to be a wife, right? So I was working on those things and really like listening and really checked into that. As you know, August came, relationship blew up, or you may have not known the time frame, but that's the time frame. So now you know. Relationship blew up, and I was left very confused. I was left very, 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 very confused. I definitely had all the emotions. I had anger. I had hurt. I felt like, the echoes of my past, that, I wouldn't have somebody that would love me, were ringing so loudly in my ears that I had to like almost like hold my head not to hear them. And I know that probably sounds dramatic, but it was the absolute truth, right? So I was like, okay, this is not how I saw 2025 panning out. And now I'm in the space and I'm trying to navigate, heartbreak and betrayal and all the things. And I'm like, okay, God, so what's going on? Right? What is going on? What is happening? And I will say that in spite of the torturous way that I had to experience the end of the relationship, I will say that even in that, God spared me. Even in that. So imagine if I'm saying, somebody who was like preparing and thinking about, walking down the aisle and all that, and now I'm able to say that God was gracious to me in that he ended the relationship when it did. I'm very grateful. Very grateful. I know that sounds odd because I've wanted since I was a little girl to be a wife, but I don't want to be anyone's wife. I want to be the man God has for me's wife because that means it's going to be something that is sustainable, um, because God has his hand on it. God is awesome despite all. And that's the truth. That is the truth. So, I'm just laughing. I'm laughing because I've talked about this. Excuse me. I am so stuffy, and I feel like it happens every time that I do this. I have no idea why I'm stuffy right now, so I apologize. Um, but I've been talking about, the end of the relationship in a variety of different ways and a lot of different conversations. And sometimes it gets me super emotional. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, it's matter of fact, it is. Um, and I think that's going to be the case because one of the things that God had me do, and I think I spoke to you all about it last week, is he's asked for me to write a list of intentions for 2025. And what I mean by that is things I intend to leave in this year. So I'm not bringing those things into the next year. I talked about it on TikTok in terms of luggage. So, or excuse me, more so as of like these tenants, these things that I've allowed to have, they've leased my heart, they've leased my spirit, they've leased my emotions, and now we're kicking them out, right? Their lease is up in January. Sorry, your lease is not renewed. You can't come into the new year. You're not no longer a tenant here. So I, was thinking about those things, and it's just easy things. I'm going to leave heartache in 2025, and I'm going to leave. And again, I have to literally write my list, and I have to be really thoughtful and intentional about the list because the list may be people that you need to leave behind this year. And I'm not saying you can't talk to them ever again, but the way that you communicate or the frequency may need to change, right? So maybe it's an opportunity, somebody presented an opportunity and been going back and forth, and God was like, no. And you're like, but God, I could make a lot of money or it might do this. And he's like, that's cool. I don't care about that. No, it's a no. A no is a no. And maybe that's something you need to leave in this year. One of the things and it came to me, I think yesterday, or might have been the day before when I was doing a TikTok, keep your distance exactly. One of the things that, God shared with me as I was talking to people. Y'all, sometimes I feel like, I'm like, God, there was really no need for you to have this conversation in my brain right now. Like, you could have waited till I logged off, but you want to do that? Okay, cool. He told me that I need to leave in 2025 the hope of being married this year. And I was like, woo, well, okay. I mean, the man is, it's not going to happen. So yeah, but I needed to leave the hope in that, because the hope was what was crushed. The hope was what was, I was betrayed too, but the hope was betrayed. All the things that I thought that was going to happen, the combining of, purpose to have a church and all the things that I had built up and had looked forward to in my heart and in my mind and all that. I need to literally write those things on paper and leave those things in this year. Now, I don't know what I'm supposed to burn the paper. I don't know what he hasn't shared with me that. I don't know if I'm supposed to keep the paper as an acknowledgement of, again, the things that God has brought me through and over. He hasn't quite told me that yet, but that is something that I have to do. And that was emotional when I heard myself saying that I had to, leave the hope of that love or of that relationship or of that marriage, of being that person's wife. I had to leave all of those things in this year. Now, most people would be desperately sad by that, and I was sad by that. I was releasing that, and so I cried, y'all, which is not shocking. If you know me, I cry, right? But what it did say to me is it makes room for love. It makes room for my person. It makes room for joy to come back in, because those are the things that can get robbed when you're betrayed. Those things, those experiences, those feelings, those sentiments, those things can get taken from you when you allow for it to happen. right? Nobody can take your joy unless you give them access to do it, right? No one can take your peace of mind unless you grant them access. This is why I'm talking to you about the seed of purpose that you have inside of you, and it is your job to protect that seed. I will also say, before I met him, and I've said this to you all before in one of my other episodes, I was in a place that of peace, and I mean like literally unnatural, supernatural peace. I was cool. Like, people would say something like, "Oh, it's fine, whatever. If it happened, cool, whatever." I had literally said to God at that point, "God, if you never give me that desire, which I've had, I will still honor you. I will still love you. I will still serve you all the days of my life." And I meant it. I meant it. The thing that I had to also remember during this healing journey is God doesn't allow for you to have things in your spirit to torture you. And since I've been a little girl, there are some girls that don't give at all a care about being married. They're like, I ain't never thought about that. I never had no Barbie and Ken's wedding and them kissing and saying I do. Like, I ain't never done that. Y'all, I did all the things, saw the castle, all of it, right? I've literally said to him, God, if this is not something that I'm going to experience, take the desire. Because the desire is how the enemy can make you feel trapped. And it can make you feel unworthy, because then you're living in this cycle of, I'm still not chosen, still not chosen, still not chosen, right? It's like loading. It's like, the spiral when your connection is going bad, that type of a thing. And make room, joy will come, and we'll take I appreciate that. That was a real thing for me to say, that I had to release those things in this year. But what that says is, because I know that God has that person for me, that person's looking for me. Right? God is working on that person, just like he's been working on me all year. Y'all, I didn't know that even though I was in a relationship, that God was working on me for my person. Like, that didn't make sense. Like, even the thought of that, and even saying it out loud, I know probably people are like, how God preparing you from some other man when you were with a whole man? I don't know, y'all. Like, don't ask me, ask him. And if he responds, can you let me know what he said? But the AOL connection circle, for real, right? They don't even know. See, Tiffany, you aging yourself, girl. You aging yourself. That's all I'm saying. You're aging yourself. But I think that God knew everything that he was doing. I said the day that all this happened, y'all, I literally did a sipping tea episode that was the one that got away. And what God told me this week was, I was the one that got away. I was the one. Right? And it's not about him feeling like that. I don't really care if that's how he feels. Lord, work on me. I don't care. I don't care what he feels, thinks, or what he's doing, or who he's doing it with. Don't care. But I'm the one that got away. I got away with my mental health. I got away with my spirit. I got away with people that care about me. I got away with this platform, sipping tea. I got away with the TikTok that he's blessed me with. I got away because God has purpose and intentioned my seed to do a thing. And I cannot be doing that with a purpose partner that would choke out the purpose of my seed. Period, point blank. Does it feel bad? Yes, because that was not how I intended it, y'all. I started 2025 with a very different thought. I was making room. I was bringing my whole self. I was preparing to bring my whole self into a marriage that would have been torturing my spirit. Point blank. Like, there's no other way for me to say it. It would have been torturing my spirit. And sometimes we so much want to be in a relationship. We so want to be somebody. And y'all, I do. I want to be somebody. Let me be clear. I'm not saying I don't want to be somebody. I want somebody to be like, yeah, that's me. That's me. Stacy is my person. So I do want that. But we can't want that so desperately that we allow for us to be treated, mishandled. We allow ourselves to get out of alignment. We're not protecting our seed of purpose. It cannot happen. Why? Because that means we're never bringing our whole self to God. God is not able to use our whole self, right? We're not bringing that to him. We're bringing him piecemeal. God, you can get this piece right here. I'm going to give you this piece. You can borrow this piece Sunday through Wednesday. On Thursday, I'm gonna give you another portion, but I need it back on Friday because I need to use that for Friday night. Okay. And then on Saturday, I'm gonna have you on a strict schedule. It's hour by hour, right? No. Right? No, that does not work. That does not work. It's imperative for us to recognize, yes, we can have desires that we are longing for. We can have things that we pray to God for. But I want to make sure that when you're thinking about bringing your whole self, you're thinking about bringing forth that seed that makes people attracted to you. And I'm talking about as far as, you have brightness in your spirit and people are like, why did, Stacy just got treated horribly? What the world could she be smiling about? I'm smiling because God still loves me. He don't play about me. The reason why I didn't end up in that marriage is because God does not play about me. He was not fitting to do that. He was like, no, absolutely not. I didn't see it then. Absolutely not. I was like, God, like what's good? I thought we were cool. It appears that we may be on mixed terms. Like, God, what's going on? But he does all things well, y'all. All things he does well. Even when it does not feel good. All things well. Yes, you got away and have a purpose that is going to grow and flourish. Amen. I received that. When I say, y'all, when I say bringing my whole self now, because when I said it in February is 100% different than what I'm saying it right now. Bringing my whole self now looks like Stacy seeing worth that she never would have seen before. Because worth for me, and it's funny because I just really never thought about it. I often reflected not feeling like I had worth as a kid, but I also reflected in feeling like I had worth because I had a big title, a couple of big titles, right? So when you have these big titles and people are now in your face all the time and they're coming to you, you're a director level, you're an executive, and when you're thinking of yourself in those terms, and it's not that I felt braggadocious about them, but I felt like those validated me in the eyes of people. People saw my worth. So therefore, there's my worth. Okay, cool. God took my whole job, y'all. He allowed my job to go. So then I was like, oh, okay, I don't have that's not wait a minute. Where's my purpose, Lord? But at that point, I still was preparing to be a wife. God took that in August. And I was like, okay, now, hi God, can we have a conference call? I know you're busy, but can you just get on the line real quick? I need 2 minutes, 2 minutes tops, right? In that space of time, yes, it was extraordinarily disjointed, distorting, painful, depressing, hurtful, all the things that you can imagine that having those things happen this year. But what God has done is release me from things that have been holding me hostage for the entirety of my natural life. Deflection. I told you guys about that last week. I don't need to do that anymore. I'm going to have difficult conversations. People may not like how the conversations go, but it is my intention to not be hurtful or not be mean or any of those things, but it's my intention to actually recognize the voice that I've been telling other people that they've had their entire life. I also have. And I can be the one that says, okay, I get that that's, how you communicate, but that doesn't work for me. So what can we do about this? Because there's two people in this conversation. So how can we handle this? It allows for me to also, be able to do things as far as believing in myself, believing in my capabilities, not allowing for people to diminish me because I don't have a degree in certain things or I don't have this or that. The other people that have worked in my industry, because let me tell you, God put me in that position without the degrees that people said were mandatory or required on the actual job ad. And the last job that I had, people actually created that job title and all the responsibilities for me. How do I know? Because they asked me, what would you like to have in the, so that's what I'm saying. God will make way and he will make room for you if you allow yourself to consistently make room for him. As long as you're protecting that seed, that is good. That is your whole self. That seed is your whole self. All the other things are additive and they're nice, and that is your whole self. Last thing I want to say that God did, and I'm gonna let you go. because y'all, your girl's hungry. I'm not gonna sit here and lie, but I'm hungry. I was gonna eat a cookie, but then somebody reminded me that I probably have the stuff in my teeth, and I was like, that's not it, y'all. That's not it. Um, the last thing that I want to share with you is really something that blew me away. And that happened on this past Sunday. I was doing my TikTok, and as I was talking to the screen, right? I was sitting by a window, not this window, but I was sitting by another window, and there's a, what do you call it? The blinds, or the thick blinds, but blinds. So I had a couple like lines on my face because the sun was like coming down a bit. And as I was looking at my face, y'all, and I wish that there was a way for me to actually show you what I was experiencing, but my face actually looked different to me as I was talking, right? So I'm looking at myself, and I know the people that I was talking to were probably like, what in the world is going on? Because I kind of was like shocked as I'm looking at myself, right? So I'm talking and talking, and then I had to stop talking. The Bible says that, and he says, and people it's funny, people actually were praying for this for someone else that I know, that God remove the scales from their eyes so that they can see, right? Y'all, when I say God remove the scales from my eyes so that I could see myself for the first time in my, like, as long as I can remember. Growing up, I never felt beautiful, ever, 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 ever. Pretty, okay, sometimes. Cute, more often than not. Like, because people, oh, you're so cute. Look at your cheeks, right? So cute, yeah, okay. When people say that, I could buy that. But beautiful, nah. Like, no. And even when men were interested, or like they would say, oh, Stacey, you're so beautiful, I really, and this is the honest truth, y'all, I really felt like they were talking about my heart. Like, Stacey has such a beautiful heart. Why? Because I always became like one of the bros. Like, oh, Stacey's cool. They're punching me in my shoulder and junk and asking me about who they were dating. Like, I always naturally fell into that role. Stacey's a good person, good girl, blah, 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 blah. Right? Cool. Until I was like, if you're interested in a dude and he's like, punching you in the shoulder, I'm like, well, I guess I just got friend zoned. So it wasn't that exciting then. But I literally looked at myself on Sunday and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm beautiful. Y'all, weirdest thing ever. The trippiest thing ever. But it is also a release that God needed for me to be able to see. Not because I need to be like, yeah, I'm beautiful, y'all. I'm beautiful, y'all. Not for that. But because he needed to change the way that I see me. Because he sees us as beautiful. He sees us as fearfully and wonderfully made. But I didn't see so I had a distorted view of how I was seeing me. So he needed to be like, no, that's not what we're going to do. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I made you to be the head and not the tail, but you constantly see yourself as the tail. So I have to change how you physically are now seeing yourself so that you see yourself in a way that does not carry the burden of not feeling like you're enough. Right? And I've had people that I was going to call them friends, but not. I've had people in my life that have always made me feel like I was like the sidekick character. But God is like, no, you also have main character energy, right? You don't have to be the sidekick. You don't have to be the kooky, funny, because y'all, there are so many things that we do because we feel like we can't be that main character, right? Oh, Stacey's always funny and sarcastic and this and that. Again, that was part of my deflection toolkit, right? But recognizing how God sees you and allowing yourself not to walk in a space of I'm less than, I'm not worthy is the most amazing thing. And when he did it, I did not know what to do with myself, y'all. I did not know what to do with myself. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. You're gorgeous too, girl. You're gorgeous too. You already know. I say that all the time though, so that's not news. But in any event, I just wanted you to I wanted to share that bringing my whole self has an entirely different meaning than it did at the beginning of the year. And you will find as you purpose to heal, you're going to feel that way about yourself. You're going to see yourself as different. It is important that as God allows for you to see yourself as different, as God allows for you to walk in that different space, do not let anybody make you feel like that's not the truth, right? People want to, unfortunately, keep you in a space that's comfortable for them, but that's not where you're going. That's not what you're doing. That's cool if they continue to see yourself that way, Make sure that that stays in their brain and does not transfer its way into yours. That is not the portion that God has for us. That is not the portion. And at some point, we need to say, enough is enough. And I'm at that point. Enough is enough. All right, y'all. We made it through another episode. I appreciate y'all. Thank you again for all of your support. I appreciate every single thing that you guys have done in terms of, just being here and being supportive and engaging. And I'm thankful and grateful for you all that have started your healing journey. And I want to tell you, I support you as you process. Give yourself grace as you navigate it. All right. And again, as I say at the end of every one of my episodes, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and extend to yourself first. You first. You first. And then to me, a measure of grace. I will see you on the next episode next Saturday. Sipping Tea with Stacey T. Bye, y'all. Have a great day.